is Elizabeth Frost. I work for the Department of Primary Industries in New South Wales for the state government. My role is honeybee technical specialist, so I provide research, development, and extension, particularly for the New South Wales beekeeping industry, but also nationally through the project that I'll be speaking with you today about. So Australia's Honeybee Genetic Improvement Program is a national program that came about initially through an investment from the Department of Primary Industries that we're able to leverage with a federal grant through the Rural Research and Development for Profit program. With this program, we manage it through AgriFutures, and our key program collaborators are the University of Sydney, Better Bees WA, Australia's longest running breeding program based in WA, and University of New England Animal Genetics and Breeding Unit. We get in-kind contributions through the Wean Bee Foundation and additional funding from horticulture industries that are reliant on honeybee pollination, such as Costa Olam, Austin, South Pacific Seeds, and also donations from commercial beekeepers through the Wean Bee Foundation. So in a nutshell, my colleague, Dr. Nadine Chapman from Sydney Uni, has put it well on this chart. We're developing standardized methods for selection, so defining production traits that industry has identified with us that are valuable to them in a selection manual. So we'll be training beekeepers in the selection manual on this Friday, and recording that training session. And the program is set up in two ways. So we've got a centralized model where Department of Primary Industries manages a research population. So in other livestock industries, this is referred to as a reference population. And we've also got a decentralized model. So commercial beekeepers and queen breeders will be able to record data on the production traits that are important for them, which they'll decide on, and they'll be able to transfer that data into University of New England's database that they've developed for the beekeeping industry. And if they've got enough pedigree, so genetic background information and production data, then University of New England geneticists will be able to estimate breeding values, which the beekeeper then can inform their selection traits with. So we're trying to add value to existing queen breeders' efforts because their cost of production is rising greater than their profits at this point in time. Thus, it's a tough time for attracting people to the queen breeding sector, which the whole of industry relies on, from which to purchase their queen bees and have healthy and thriving colonies. We've got a lot of beekeeper input, both through donated breeder queens from Better Bees WA, as well as queen breeders in every other major beekeeping state or territory. And I'd like to thank all those beekeepers and acknowledge them today. Due to the strong horticulture investment in this program, we're also looking at pollination-related traits, which may be of interest to some beekeepers out west who are selecting for pollen hoarding or pollen foraging to supplement their business through pollen sales for the human health industry, for example. We won't be forcing any beekeepers to select for these things. This is only something that we're looking at in the DPI reference population, which will be able to provide these insights to growers as well as to beekeepers. So we're not selecting for pollen foraging isolation. We're selecting for our top traits that beekeepers have identified through our surveys and different workshops, such as honey production, temperament, brood viability, resistance to pests and diseases, and pollination-related traits, such as pollen foraging. So through the season, Dr. Chapman and our bee manager, Slavi Nenov, and myself will lead production trait recording through the eastern states population and with commercial beekeepers over here. And Better Bees WA is spearheading data collection with UWA collaborators, so on their top traits, including honey production, temperament, different brood nest traits, as well as looking at hygienic behavior, which we'll look at as well. So with the DPI population, we're taking this type of record every time we assess a hive, routinely assess a hive, or go to a hive to supplementally feed it, for example, or check on the development of the hive. Does it need something added or taken away in terms of space requirement? So we put this kind of information routinely in our data sheets, and you can look more into the definitions of each of these things in our selection manual when we have that available for you this winter. So this season has been a build-up for Plan B reference population. So getting donated hives, building those up. I've been artificially inseminating daughter queens from the breeders we've gotten in from WA and Queensland, Tassie, South Australia, New South Wales breeders. So replicating those breeders, naturally mated breeders we've been donated, and artificially inseminating their daughters, so that we'll be able to employ that method to hopefully make targeted selection decisions and maybe increase some of our production traits faster than we otherwise would using natural mating alone. So that brood viability trait, I'll keep coming back to that one because this is a bit of an introduction to you all about the Honeybee Genetic Improvement Program, but also these fertility traits that I looked at in a literature review on honeybee fertility work that's been done to date. So queen quality trait that beekeepers are already selecting for, always a good start, is brood viability. So that's that solid frame that you see. The brood that's kind of in the center and towards the bottom of that frame is very solid. There are very few open cells, thus telling the beekeeper that this is a well-mated queen, number one. So she's mated with a diversity of drones that are not closely related. So there's a lot of viable brood there from that perspective, and also from a low disease presence perspective. So she's got to have a few things going right, and of course environment comes to play as well. What are the nutritional inputs? Are the nutritional inputs available both naturally in the field or through supplemental feeding at a high enough quality that it's able to support this amount and quality of brood? So with our standardized selection manual, this is just one example of a definition of a production trait scoring methods. So for honey production with the DPI population and with the queen breeders, the horners, they weigh honey production at a per kilo per individual hive basis, and better bees will be looking at it on a scale, a scoring scale. So with the reproductive tendencies of honeybees, the queen has to mate with a diversity of unrelated drones in order to produce a colony that has a high level of fitness. So a queen mates with many different drones, ideally, an average of 12 or potentially upwards of 30 different drones or sires. So this complicates our breeding modeling, because in other livestock industries, there's typically only one dam or mother and one sire or father. In this case, the queen is the dam and the drones are the sires. In this case, there's multiple sires. So with natural mating, we have the least control over that, but we can employ different controlled mating programs, such as artificial insemination, which we'll use in our reference population, geographic isolation of mating, which Better Bees employs with the Rottennest breeding program, and temporal or timing control of mating, which the Horners employ in their breeding program. With our queen and drone fertility traits, again, I thought I'll just look into these as part of the part-time studies I'm doing at the same time as this program. And this is kind of some future work to look towards. Once we work on those traits that are the most important to beekeepers and increasing their profit, then we can focus on these other traits that other livestock industries have made great gains to their profitability by looking at. So I'm happy to share the full manuscript with anybody who's interested, but basically what it covers is existing research done on both the queen and the drone fertility traits. So with our queen or dam fertility traits, there's one standout, which is not a destructive, doesn't require destructive sampling. That is, you don't have to kill the queen to measure anything about it. And that is fecundity or brood viability. And that is a game-changing trait in a lot of different livestock industries. Honeybees are livestock, according to the ATO. And it's critical to the colony that there's a high fecundity from your queen bee. So that plays into the productivity capacity of that hive. So the more brood or viable broods that that queen is generating that she can produce, the more individuals in that colony, the greater capacity that colony has for nectar foraging and downstream honey production. Most of these traits with these queens and drones, they're linked to strongly linked to environment. So beekeeper management at that developmental stage. What is the quality and quantity of feed that that developing queen bee or drone is getting? Is it sufficient to develop a robust and large individual, which typically the larger the individual, the more sperm production, for example, the greater egg production capacity. So that's a critical step in that queen production, uh, the business of queen production, that you need to really get right, both the quantity and quality of feed and the age at which grafting occurs. So ensuring that you're really going for the youngest larvae, fertilized larvae possible in that critical grafting time. So that larvae gets the longest time period possible to feed on royal jelly, this high value food source for queen bee development. And that plays into the development of the reproductive organs that are highly developed in queen bees versus worker bees. So our paired ovaries made up of ovarials, the egg production unit. So the better fed and the longer fed with royal jelly the female larvae is, the greater potential she has for higher number of ovarial production, which is spermatheca, but also different studies have showed that different genetic lines have varying sizes of spermathecus, and that spermathecae, I should say, and that can play into what is her capacity for sperm storage, because the queen bee stores that sperm for her entire life and decides when to release it to fertilize an egg, which will yield a female. Queen pheromone production studies are in their very early days, but again, this is a potential quality parameter. At this stage, it requires destructive sampling, so the queen has to die to be able to assess this. So it's not really a trait top candidate in our production, our potential fertility traits. But fecundity is the real star here, because you don't have to sacrifice the queen to understand what her fecundity is. You have to look through the brood nest as you would be doing anyways for quality or pest and disease checks of your colonies. So this is our top fertility trait candidate for queen bees, as well as for a measure to say, was the drone production sufficient in this area? That's another kind of quality parameter from our drone side. So drones, there's even fewer studies on drones, but importantly, there's a large body of work done by Australian researcher Dr. John Rhodes on the East Coast, and he looked at several different lines or strains from different operations, different queen breeding operations, and showed that there's a difference, there's a genetic difference in sperm production and volume from different lines. So if you look up Dr. John Rhodes' thesis, that is a wealth of information for anyone interested in drone quality parameters specific to Australia. So a very valuable piece of work. He showed that there's a there's a correlation between body weight and sperm quantity. So this comes back again both to the environment within which that drone was reared. Did that unfertilized larvae have the best, most nutritious food, largest quantity of food available to it at time of development? And what was the genetic line? There are differences there, as well as with sperm production and semen volume. Again, this is a fatal measurement, but whenever the drone mates through flying to a drone congregation area or through artificial insemination and sperm collection, either is fatal. And with artificial insemination programs, at that point, you would be able to measure semen volume. But this is something that's, I would say, pretty far down the track from developing into a selection method that's relevant for many commercial beekeeping industries. If you are an artificial insemination technician, this is something you would be interested in, because you may down the track be at a position where you could sell straws of honeybee semen, just like other livestock industries do. Miscellaneous traits are just kind of the world is your oyster, but I would encourage anyone who's interested in this talk, to get in touch and to focus on those traits that first and foremost are valuable to colony fitness, because that underpins a sustainable and viable beekeeping industry, which supports, any diet you can imagine. Healthful diet is underpinned by honeybee pollination. So I encourage any researcher out there, when you're thinking of your questions, think to yourself as well, what difference does this make to the beekeeping industry and for beekeepers that underpin our food security? So if you're interested to hear more, please join us this Friday. Otherwise, we'll catch up with you on a recording of this presentation on our standardized manual, and open invitation to come out and visit the East Coast sometime. We'll have an opening for our honey extraction and training facility on our open house the 16th of October. Tocal Beekeeping Field Day, Australia's longest running beekeeping field day. And if you're passionate about beekeeper education, please look at our job application, which is open now. There's advertisement for an education officer, honeybee coordinator. In these tough employment times, this is a golden opportunity for anyone who's really passionate about the beekeeping industry, education, research, and development. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll hopefully speak with you soon.